I'm Scott Malevsky, and this is Interviews with Me.
Oh, Maine, your rivers, your back roads claim me.
This week, Scott Cowger.
For years, I was thinking about renovating a place or building a place or buying a place where people could gather. That was something inside of me has driven me to create a gathering place.
Because everyone has a story. My next guest has been quite committed to the state of Maine, putting his proverbial money where his mouth is. He served in the Maine state legislature as a representative from 1996 to 2004, as a state senator from 2004 to 2006, and as director of outreach and communication for the Maine DEP from 2006 to 2008. He has participated in the Trek Across Maine every year since 1985. We'll get to that.
Okay.
And since 1992 has owned and operated Maple Hill Farms with his partner, Vince Hannon. He has a degree in civil and environmental engineering from Swarthmore College. Swarthmore. Is that how you pronounce that?
I always do it with the R silent, but there's a lot of debate about that.
Swarthmore. Okay, Swarthmore College.
Yeah.
He is a past chair of the Maine Tourism Association and member of the Hallwell Board of Trade, the Kennebec Valley Chamber of Commerce, Maine Innkeepers Association, and the Maine Farm Vacation Association. That's a thing?
Well, it was. It's sort of gone a little...
Gone by the wayside,
Gone
okay.
by the wayside, but it still exists, I guess.
And he is an Uber driver.
Correct. Yep.
In 2014, Maple Hill Farms was awarded the Kennebec Valley Chamber of Commerce President's Award. He is a leader in the state of green initiatives when it comes to business. Please welcome Scott Cowger.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for doing this.
Sure.
I've
neat.
I've been wanting to do this for a while, so this will be a lot of fun. So first of all, before we get into all that, you're from Brunswick.
Correct.
Which is
I'm a native Mainer.
fantastic.
Yeah.
You're not from away,
Nope.
as they put it. Tell me about Brunswick, growing up in Brunswick.
Well, my parents were all from away, and brothers and sisters, too. So
That's okay, but you're accepted. 'cause
I'm
you
the
were
only one
here.
born here. That's right. That's right. I like to remind them of that. I loved growing up in Brunswick. It was a very diverse community. At the time we had a very active Naval Air Station, plus Bowdoin College, and being on the coast, and a wonderful community with a lot of diversity and vibrancy that still exists today. It's Brunswick's always thrived, even downtown, as other downtowns have struggled to
This is true.
stay current. Yeah.
Now, tell me about your parents. Where were your parents from?
They were both from California and New Mexico originally.
Okay.
Yep. They met at Antioch College, moved to Maine along with some other folks to help set up a medical practice here.
Okay.
That was kind of a new approach to things, where you had a whole set of doctors that you would go see.
Yep.
My dad wasn't the doctor, by the way. He was the business manager. So
Okay.
that's what brought him to Maine.
Oh, wow.
Brought,
All the way to
brought
Maine.
the family to Maine. Yeah, yeah.
What do you remember the most about your mom?
She was a beautiful woman, had tons of friends, and sadly died quite young when I was just home from college with cancer, but highly respected and always giving back to the community. I always remember her baking beautiful brownies or cookies or something for the hospital bake sales that they would hold all the time. And she'd never let me have any of them. She said, no, those are for the bake sale. So, but she was always doing something to give back, and that was a really big motivating factor to me.
Now, tell me about your dad. What do you remember about your dad?
Dad's still alive at age 94.
Wow.
Doing just fine, actually. He doesn't drive like Prince Philip does. But
Sure.
anymore. It's probably a good thing. Dad was also very active in sort of local politics. Perhaps that was the seed for me to get involved. Yeah, yeah. But also a very active person. Played tennis and golf and did a lot of things as long as he could, well into his 80s. And neat guy. Yeah.
Now, what was your childhood like growing up in Brunswick? What do you remember the most?
And it's childhood sort of has faded away a lot by now. So many other things I think have supplanted its memories. Very much a loner and very much a geek. So I'm a proud geek with my academics.
So you were a good student.
Good student. Yeah, yeah. I didn't get in much trouble for anything. At least not in high school. Maybe as a younger kid I did, but yeah, I did a lot of studies. Just loved being outdoors. Loved nature. I think that's where my first love of the environment came, by living in the country. We had some property on the ocean. We didn't build the house. We built the house up by the road because my parents couldn't afford to build the road down to the water. So
Yeah.
But going for strolls down the meadow down to the water was always a pleasure of mine as a kid.
Was that your favorite thing to do as a kid?
I think so. Yeah, walking in the woods or going down to the ocean and skipping stones and stuff. But, by myself. I wasn't a big party boy at all.
With your mom and dad living here, and this is where your family was, did you have any relatives close by, or were they all in other states?
No, they're all in other states. We really didn't have a relative might visit once in a while, and that was a big deal. And it was a special occasion when a relative came to visit.
So you didn't
I
get a
didn't
chance.
get to know. They didn't know my grandfather very well,
Okay.
or grandmothers were wonderful folks, but again, didn't get to see them. Traveled to New Mexico a few times, even
Yep.
as a very young kid, to go see them. But those trips are few and far between.
Did you have any best friends growing up?
Yeah, a few, but no real close friends.
Yeah.
Good friends in high school, which was a great thrill last year. Celebrated my 40th high school reunion,
Oh, my goodness.
and it was really fun to connect with a lot of people. And I even randomly connected with one of my very good friend in high school in Bangkok last year.
Oh, no kidding.
So we had lunch together. Yeah, that was a really cool thing. Yeah, we both sort of kick ourselves because neither one of us took a picture of the occasion, but we. Doesn't matter. The memories are still there.
How many siblings do you have?
One of each.
Okay.
One brother, one sister. Sister's in Topsom. Her kids, she's got 2 kids that are still around the area, although the kids were raised out of state. They're all from away, too. I'd like to remind them of that.
So technically, they weren't born here, but
That's
you
correct.
were.
I
Okay.
was. I'm the only one in the whole family, come to think of it. Yeah. Yeah, my brother's out in Seattle and has been out there a long time with his family, yeah.
Now, what did you do with your friends growing up? Going out and doing stuff with your friends?
Oh, a little bike riding here and there.
Yep.
Again, we live way out in the country, so
Made it hard to
Yeah,
get
it was hard
into
to sort of say, hey, I'm going to go visit so-and-so because there wasn't anybody nearby. But I did a lot of school activities. The math team in Brunswick was a state championship math team. This shows my geekiness. And we actually were given varsity letters.
For math?
For
Wow.
math. And I was very proud that the school recognized, academic achievements with the varsity letters. And that was a pretty unusual thing, yeah.
That's
yeah.
pretty forward thinking, yeah.
Yeah, back in the 70s, that was, and they only did that once. So, but I still have my varsity letter.
So what was the worst thing you did growing up?
So the worst thing I did growing up, I guess, again, I was a pretty good kid. I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but I did have quite a list of speeding tickets. So when I was 16, in Maine, you get your driver's license,
Sure,
and take to the roads. That was a great sense of freedom for me. Again, being out in the country, and I had quite a list of speeding tickets and. I guess I wasn't a kid, but when I was, I don't know, maybe 18, 19, I got a letter saying, you have too many tickets, please enclose your license and send it back to us, and we'll keep it for 6 months and give it back to you. And I said, no! And I learned a big lesson then, and
Wow.
great respect for the law,
I bet.
because I came to Augusta and sat down very much like this, across a table at a hearing with a big burly hearing officer, and I was a little kid, and I said, I really need my license for my job. And he gave me a break, but he gave me a good lecture. And
So don't speed.
don't speed again, or you're going to lose your license for a year or something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
And I learned my lesson for a while.
Okay.
But that's about as bad as it got.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
Did you have any heroes growing up?
I mean, a lot of heroes in my life, I guess. I mean, I grew up as a very young kid with JFK, John Kennedy, and I thought he was a great hero, sort of a young, energetic, enthusiastic president, and I think, again, that sort of was maybe a seed for my political career. Also, people that I've always seen as folks doing good for the world, whoever they are, I can't sort of say anything specifically. People who do something good for the sake of it, not because it makes them money or anything. Those have always been heroes of mine. I can't put a specific name to it, but they're out there.
Moving on to school.
Sure.
Let's go into school, getting into high school. When did you make the decision that you wanted to be into engineering?
Well, I kept taking these aptitude tests saying, what's a good career for you? And they all just sort of kept coming back saying engineer. I think I wanted to be, I wasn't sure what I wanted to be. I think I wanted to be more of an artist and more of a creator. But engineering is creating things, too. It just sort of was the direction I was going in, excelling in math and those sorts of things, and then just fell in my lap. I went on to Swarthmore College, which is really a top-notch liberal arts school.
Now, what made you choose
Well,
Swarthmore?
because I wanted an academic challenge, and I wanted to get out of Maine, to see
Sure.
see the world, quote unquote.
Yep.
Made it as far as Philadelphia, and I wanted to be an engineer. And there are very few places that have engineering programs at liberal arts colleges. It's a pretty unique little combination of things. And I was thrilled that I got in there because it's very challenging, again, academically. To this day, I contend that they wanted me because I was from Maine and they wanted some geographic distribution in their class. So So that was a thrill for me to get to Swarthmore. I was a straight A student in high school, but you end up at Swarthmore College where every student there was a straight A student in high school. And some people started to panic when they wouldn't get A's in their classes. And I sat back and realized, fortunately, early on, that I'm amongst my peers here, and I don't care as long as I pass. And I did, so I worked very hard still, but didn't worry about the getting A's anymore. I just wanted to pass my classes. That was the important thing.
Yep. So what was your ultimate goal after you graduated college with a civil degree?
Well, I
Civil
just
engineering?
came back and looked for a job. Couldn't
Was your
find
plan
one.
always to come back to Maine, or?
Well, I don't know what. I didn't really have a plan going into it. It was just live, let's see where life takes you, which
Okay.
has been my adventure in life
Sure.
all along. So I came back to Maine because I wanted to. Also, the economy was terrible in 1982, so it was hard to get a job. So I actually came back and moved back home. Thanks, Mom. Had a wonderful time coming back to Maine, and I'm probably jumping ahead of your questions, but I ended up, we had a little cabin right on the water down in Brunswick. It was just a very rustic little cabin, but I moved in there and lived a pretty rustic life for a couple of years. I had to haul every cup of water I needed down this long meadow that I mentioned. Winters, it was a long hike in the winters. You couldn't drive down there at all, maybe a few months in the summer. I learned a great respect for natural resources. Again, sort of fits into my life pattern here. Great respect for water, coming out of a tap, because I didn't have that for 2 years. I had to carry everything. And my heat was a little wood stove. And
Well, that gives you a different perspective when you're living that way.
It is. But it was just an amazing little spot, just in the middle of nature, nobody around, and it was a wonderful experience of life. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that documentary of the guy in Alaska who videoed himself alone in the wilderness.
Yeah, it's I've loved that show. I love that show.
That's pretty
Absolutely.
good.
So it was similar to that. He was really roughing it. Yeah, but
Now, when you were at Swarthmore, did you, as a college student, get a chance to explore the surrounding area at all?
Oh yeah, I mean it was such a thrill you could hop on a train that bisected the campus actually, and be in Philadelphia in 20 minutes, Center City, Philadelphia, and it was, for me, a little guy from rural Maine, it was a wonderful thing to see. Both the big city, the opportunities, the food, the culture, museums, incredible museums, and again, to talk about diversity, to come from Maine to see wonderful racial diversity and social diversity and economic diversity that I hadn't experienced here. It was that again opened up pathways in my life that I've continued to enjoy.
Now, what about Amish country? Did you get out there at all?
I didn't. I think I went out there at one point. Yeah, one of my classmates got married right after college, and that was out in that area. So I did get one little quick trip out there. Yeah, but I didn't have a car until my senior year in college, and I bought an old Maine car and drove that back and forth. I can't believe I did that with 130,000 miles or something on it, and that gave me some freedom. Then I did a little bit more, but it's a tough school. Everybody, their social life was pretty limited. We were working all the time. That's on studies and stuff. Yeah.
You moved back to Maine.
Yep.
You live in a cabin.
Yep.
For 2 years.
Yep.
Carrying everything.
Yeah.
Bringing everything in. Where do you go from there?
Sure. Well, and sadly, my mother died, and we had to sell that property. We couldn't afford to keep it. It was my parents did it back in the 50s, and when land was cheap, and here it was oceanfront, and so we had to sell that place. So I bought a little condo in North Yarmouth and just settled in there. One of the things I've missed in my life is that I've never had the experience of living in an apartment. I sort of missed out on that. I was certainly ready to get one and move out and have, running water. That would have been fun. But when my mother got sick, I stayed home and took care of her and then moved into a little condo thing. And I volunteered in the North Yarmouth Fire Department for a year. That was fun, learning that stuff.
Wow. So you got to go out on fires and EMT training and that type of thing?
I just helped run the pumps and carry ladders. I was one of the new kids I was the new kid on the block.
But still,
and I was
a lot of work.
I was the closest one to the fire station, so I got there first. Yeah, and it was fun. That was a blast. Yeah.
Wow. How did Maple Hill Farms come about?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I never have a really clear answer for that, but I know that for years I was thinking about renovating a place or building a place or buying a place where people could gather. That was something inside of me has driven me to create a gathering place. Coincidentally, the big conference room here at the inn is called the Gathering Place because that just seemed to really fit. And I think that's been one of my big missions in life, is to create a space and and all the creature comforts for people to gather, whether it be, a business meeting or a wedding or a memorial service. I mean, whatever. We do everything. We even did a pre-demise party for a local resident. She wasn't sick or anything, but when she was in her mid-80s, she said, "I'm going to have a party now because I'm alive."
Well, good for her.
And she had a wonderful party. It was great. But so we'll do anything. I haven't done a divorce party yet, but I did have a request for one once. But but I love the feeling of 100 people in a room sharing ideas and laughing and talking and whatever's going on, or dancing or whatever they're doing. That feels like I've really fulfilled a purpose in life by creating that space, and hopefully this will long outlive my life on this planet Earth. That makes me feel good about it.
Was this a building that was already here and you purchased the business? Was this something that you bought and fixed up into Maple Point?
Yes.
Did you build it from scratch?
To both. Yes, to
Okay.
both. Well, the original inn was here in somewhat a different form. It was a foreclosure sale. So the bed and breakfast business had gone under. So I really had to start from square one.
Sure.
But there was a structure here. There was a small meeting space over in the carriage house, a separate little building that has since been everything's been changed, expanded, added on to. So we've got a large addition that was put on in 2003 and 2004, where we have a big commercial kitchen, a lot of support facilities, and a space that can hold up to 200 people or 300 people when we add a tent to it. So we can do much bigger events now. And it's been fun to create all that. We started small and slowly worked my way up over the last 26 years.
So how many years did it take you to kind of get up to a point where you were actually making money?
It's a good good question. And I love to advise people who are starting a small business, what it takes.
Yeah.
So it was, I think it was a good 3 years into the project here when I had a job outside of here. I also worked for the DEP back then, as not the commissioner's office level job that I had, but just working as an engineer there. I worked for a couple of years. I'd come home and sign my paycheck over to the company, and the company would take that money and spend it to all the expenses that were going on here.
Yep.
I borrowed all the money I could on my credit cards that I had from my engineering jobs and did everything I could to make this business go. And it was 3 years into it until I could take my salary, and I wrote myself a check for $1 at the end of the third year to say I'm in the black. It took a few years after that before that gradually I could take a little bit of a salary, and now we're doing just fine. Tough row to hoe, as we say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you have to give it your all. If you want a business to succeed, it's often when you've given it everything you have that you give up. And that's not when you give up. You got to hang in there. If you believe in whatever your vision is, doesn't matter what your mission is, it will work if you work hard enough at it. Doesn't matter what it is. I always tell people that. Don't give up. When that looks bleak and bad, just hang in there. Do what you can. Yeah. And it's great to see. I love seeing new businesses take off and take hold. Sometimes, this is a particularly tough business because there's a lot of overhead expenses. There's a big building and lots of mortgages and taxes and all that stuff. It's not like you can rent a space and start a business and grow from there. So it's a particularly hard business to get a foothold in.
Well, and especially in Maine, it seems like, because it would be seasonal too. I mean, unless you're geared towards winter and summer, it would be more difficult.
Right. Definitely winters were tough. I'm proud to say now that we're in the black 7 months. I mean, 7 months. We're in the black 12 months of the year.
Yep.
Not a lot in the wintertime, but we do okay.
What's been your favorite part about building this business up? When you look at this business now, what's your favorite part about it?
Sure. Favorite part is making people happy. That's what I do every day. That's my job. If I fail at that, then I'm not doing my job. And that's a job of all our staff, is to make people happy. And that's a great reward, when it comes down to it. It's just a wonderful goal to have. Hopefully you make some money, make a living, and save a little for retirement. But you have to make people happy first if you're going to succeed. And the rest just sort of comes along.
What made you make the decision to go green and do all that? I mean, it used to be the hot thing, back when, and some people kind of jumped on the bandwagon and kind of gave it a little bit of lip service, but you really dove in feet first, and you went all the way. I mean, you've got solar, you've got wind, what made that decision?
Yeah, and we started back in 2003 was when we did the wind turbine, and then we just accelerated from there.
How much did the wind turbine, the first thing you did, how much did that actually contribute to...
Very little. Truthfully. We did an analysis and thought we were going to have great wind power and it was going to do most of our electricity needs, and it sadly failed. I mean, didn't fail. I mean, it's still operating, but it's a very long payback. The wind turbine, in our particular case, will sort of pay for itself over its lifetime. So I probably didn't do enough wind monitoring or whatever, and I'm sort of glad I didn't, because if I hadn't done the wind turbine, then we wouldn't have the sort of visibility and the sort of motivation to do more things. But it turned out to be much more of a philosophical investment than an economic one. Now, that's not to say that there are places where it won't pay back. It's just that it turns out the central Maine area is not a very good wind zone overall. Right. We have a perfect site. We're at the top of a hill. The turbine has access to the wind from any direction, but it's just not the greatest geographical location overall. So anyway, I really wanted to go green, and Vince as well, because it's just a very deep-rooted philosophical commitment on my part. And I wanted to show that. And I wanted to not only be a sort of a different kind of an in by doing that, but really, as you said in the introduction, putting my money where my mouth is. I was in the legislature for 10 years, frequently chairing the Natural Resources Committee and talking about environmental issues. I wanted to serve as an example for others to follow. There's a huge economic cost to that, putting the wind turbine, and then the solar array we did in 2006. Mm-hmm. That's back when solar probably cost close to
incredibly expensive back then.
8 times or more what it costs today. But that's all right. We got a competitive federal grant to pay for a little bit of it, not a whole lot. But it was exciting to do those things, and we had a lot of notoriety because no one else was doing it. But when you're a leader in things, and we changed over to all LED lighting 7 or 8 years ago.
Which was not cheap back then either.
It was very expensive then, but Efficiency Maine had some rebates, but even again, with those rebates, it was still a lot of money we put into our lighting. But I'm very proud to say, this is what we're doing, and we're being cutting edge all along the way. Definitely a cost to that, but it was an important personal commitment for me to make. Climate change is the biggest issue facing the world right now. Some people still don't agree with that, which is amazing to me, but it's just a big threat, not only coastal areas, but extreme storm events, all sorts of things are happening that we need to take responsibility for. And I wanted to set an example of saying, hey, I'm just a little small business here. I'm not making a lot of money, but I'm investing in a lot of stuff.
I'm going to do what I can.
Do what I can, and you all should too. Go ahead and see. Yeah. I'm happy to show an example. And I've had many, many inquiries over the years. Not as many now because it's the in thing to do now, yeah. But back in the beginning, a lot of people were saying, "How do I do that?" And how does it pay back, and all that other stuff. So it's been fun to be an example for things like that. Right. Yeah, and it's continued to this day. You mentioned I'm an Uber driver, but I'm an Uber driver in a Tesla.
In a Tesla, yes.
Yeah, you're probably going to get to that. My old car died, and when I bought my Saab back in 1999. At that time, I said to myself, my next car is going to be an electric car. Back in '99, and
back then people were only just building their own electric cars.
And I said something's going to happen by the time I'll keep my car for 20 years. Well, it lasted 18 years until I blew the engine. Then I said, well, this is my opportunity to do that. And I can't really afford a Tesla, but I did. I have a heck of a car payment, but I'll keep that car for 20 years or so, and I won't be putting any fumes in the air for 20 years. It's an amazing amount of gasoline savings, an amazing amount of carbon savings I'm not putting up into the atmosphere. People will argue, by the way, well, you're burning, you're using electricity that's generated by coal, and my two answers are, one, most of the electricity in Maine is generated by natural gas, as well as hydro and some other stuff, but we don't burn coal anymore. And then the energy here is primarily wind and solar, so, no, I'm not contributing that way.
Now, you've got a couple Tesla chargers out in the parking lot. Are those powered off your solar grid?
Well, when the sun shines, yes. and the wind blows, yes.
Yeah.
But if somebody plugs in at night, no, then we're still drawing in from central Maine power.
Now, do you have any kind of battery bank backup, or is it just you offset what you...
That's right. Yep. We're grid tied, and we have what's called net metering, which not to get too political, but the former administration, the governor's administration here, tried to tighten up the net metering rules to not allow new people to put in solar.
Right.
Well, to not encourage, I should not allow, but the incentive for new people to go onto solar was greatly reduced if you didn't have net metering, which means you can generate more one day and use it the next day or whatever. I know the current governor is very set on seeing incentives come back for solar. And this is not a financial incentive; it's just a policy.
Sure.
to encourage people to do it. By the way, we have 4 electric car charging stations, which
Oh,
is,
you have 4 of them.
I think,
Wow.
more than anybody in Maine, other than LL Bean, which now has
Yep.
16, I think, or something like that. But we have 2 chargers dedicated to Teslas, and then we have 2 other EV chargers for any electric vehicle that are in our parking lot. So we can accommodate quite a bit. And, and again, this is sort of forward thinking. We paid for, frankly, Tesla paid for those 2 because I was the first one in Augusta to ask for destination chargers.
Yep.
So they agreed to put those in. There's actually a 3rd Tesla charger inside the garage, but that's the one I use.
That's for you.
Yeah, that's what I use. Yeah. And by the way, you don't need a Tesla charger to charge a Tesla. You can just plug into a
Sure.
dryer outlet or something.
Yep.
And then the other 2 charging stations we put in several years ago, again, just because we want to be cutting edge for that stuff. But they're available to anybody, anytime, for no charge. And they're used pretty regularly for our conference business.
Nice.
We don't have a lot of overnight guests yet with electric vehicles, but they're trickling in. No pun intended.
Well, I remember seeing a couple of years ago, I drove up to the marketplace and seeing the Tesla chargers
Yeah,
up there.
yeah,
and
yeah.
I remember thinking, what are these?
Yeah.
I'd never seen them before. And then I did some research and realized, oh, it's Tesla.
And those are, I could talk about Tesla forever.
Sure.
We could do a whole segment on that. Those are superchargers, which are level 3 chargers, and they charge very quickly, in like 20 minutes or so.
Oh, wow.
So that's a marvelous thing. I rarely use them in Augusta because I just plug it in the garage, and I have what's called a level. All our chargers here are level 2 chargers. Take 3 to 5 hours for a full charge. Yeah.
But if you're here for 3 to 5 hours.
If you're here for a
you're good to
conference or
go.
overnight, absolutely, you're all set. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
great. What made you decide to run for the legislature?
Sure. Another good question. I don't have good answers for these questions. People always ask me, why do you do this? Like, I want to do good for the environment. I want to improve the environment. I want to do good things for people, I should say. I want to do good things for the environment, and I want to do good things for Maine people. I was really drawn to the legislature, driving by that Capitol building and remembering way back when I had my first tour as a kid, and maybe it was 4th or 5th grade or something, we would go to the State House and have a tour.
Oh, that's a big
And
deal when you're a kid. Yeah.
Oh, it was, and I still remembered that. And it kept drawing me to think about it and what could I do? And an opportunity came to run for the legislature, and I said, I'm going to do this. Nobody knew me. Nobody knew what
I was going to say,
what
did
it was
you
about.
decide, or
I
did
did.
somebody approach you,
No,
or just
I
decided
did.
to?
And a lot of people are approached by the parties and trying,
Right.
looking for candidates. But no, I said I'm going to try this, and I was in a 3-way primary and lost in 1994. So I learned. I was humbled by that experience.
Sure.
Yeah, the candidate in my party did not win, so I came back 2 years later, and I didn't have a primary because people sort of got an idea of who I was in '94, and
Sure.
I ran.
Get your name out there a little
Yeah,
bit.
got my name out there. Had my, saved all my signs. reused
Using your
them.
own advice, you didn't give up.
That's
You
right.
went
Exactly.
back the
There
next
you
time.
go. Hey,
Yep.
thank you. I've never sort of looked at that parallel, but that's exactly what it is. Don't give up if you want to do something. And I won, defeated the incumbent by only 27 votes.
Now, who was the incumbent? At the
It was
time?
Will Garrett was the incumbent.
Yes, okay, I know
From
the
Pittston.
name.
Yeah. Will tragically. I mean, he's a great guy. We're acquaintances, and he was the gentleman who has had his family attacked years ago. Terribly attacked. Everybody survived. Terrible injuries. That was just an awful thing to see, and I'm so sorry to hear that he had to go through that. But that gave me an opportunity, and it was a very hard-fought battle to win that campaign. Sorry, Will. And then it was a fascinating experience from there. And I got right on the Natural Resources Committee, which is my passion to be on. Steve Rowe, who went on to become
Sure.
Speaker of the House a few years later, and Attorney General, and candidate for governor. He was my committee chair at the time. I learned a lot from him. Libby Mitchell was the first woman Speaker of the House in my first term, and I learned a lot from her. It was a wonderful experience. I was in my mid-30s, and it was just a great time it was a growing experience for me, too, to learn about things. And one of my biggest pleasures was getting people to come together again. So there's a similar parallel. But in my case, it was 13 members on the committee, and the entire political spectrum, all these different ideas. But if you could get the 13 members of your committee to agree on a piece of legislation, then the House and Senate would typically say, well, that's fine with us, too. So that's...
Especially if you're all in agreement.
Yeah.
Different
We
parties.
might lose one person. We tended to lose one person
Sure.
of, again, my party. because she was a real extremist and she didn't like to compromise and come up with
Right.
solutions. But I did, and our committee had a wonderful reputation, which outlasted my tenure in the legislature. I think to this day it still carries on, which is work together, get to know your colleagues,
Yeah.
become friends with people you don't agree with politically, but you know each other, and that pays back in spades because you know who your friends are, and you can disagree politically, but come up with solutions that work. And that's not the way it seems to work anymore, both
This is true.
in Washington and spilling over to Maine. And I hope that tradition will come back again.
I hear that
Yeah.
a lot. I've talked to a couple different people who've been in the legislature as part of the podcast,
Yeah.
and they all say the same thing. They're like, "It's so different today
Yeah.
than it used to be."
Yeah.
We could disagree, but we could still get along and talk and go out. And
Yep.
it does. It seems like
Yeah.
it's such a shame
Yeah.
that you can't do that anymore.
One of my current heroes was Ted Kennedy,
Yep.
and I'm reading his biography slowly because innkeeping takes an awful lot of time.
Well, yeah.
But Ted Kennedy was somebody who would stand up and fight for his principles and fight for health care and whatever. But he would go out and party like crazy with his colleagues. And
I think that was well known.
Yeah, that was well known. Exactly. That's why. Yeah. And he developed friendships with people. Then, when you had to work on a piece of legislation, you knew who you were talking to, and you would go out and have lunch, whatever you do in a back room somewhere, and you'd craft a solution that everybody wanted, or maybe people could just live with. But then he might just live with something that someone else wanted, and you'd honor stuff and solve things. And that's just, I love that part of the political process. I'm sort of glad I wasn't in the legislature over the last 10 years because it's
Yeah.
gotten really divisive, and people, it's taken personally. There are personal attacks on people, and that's just off limits to me. That's something I abhor. If somebody attacks, the one thing I hated in the legislature, if somebody attacked me personally, the hair on my back would go up, and I would be angry.
Right.
I mean, you could disagree with my political statements
Yeah.
all you want to, and I don't take that personally. And I respect you for your statements, I would say to somebody, but let's not attack each other personally. And you see that happening all the time now.
Right.
It's really so sad.
So, what was the most surprising thing that you discovered going into the legislature?
I think that you could get 13 people to agree on issues. Some people are painted as, they don't care about the environment at all. You're not going to be able to work with them. And wow, I could. Of course they agree. Everybody cares about the environment. It's just you have to sort of uncover. You have to peel back the layers and
Varying degrees.
get to what it is. What is it that you care about the environment, but you also care about small business or whatever. Let's figure out what the issue is and work together on it. I used to drive the lobbyists crazy on both ends of the spectrum because the environmentalists wanted us to maybe push for more or not let people speak in committee. I was chastised once for not letting my committee members, I was the chair, I mean, it's not really my committee, but I'm running it. I was chastised by a lobbyist once for letting other people speak in the committee and not responding to them and not sort of telling them they're wrong. And I said, I'm not going to do that. They have something they want to communicate. Let's hear it.
They have
Let's
a right
listen.
to be heard.
And let's listen to what the other person feels is important. Now, I want to know what's important to them. I don't have to agree with it, and it may not get included in any legislation, but I want to know what's important to them so we know where we stand. And I want them to know what's important to me and why it's important to me. And if you can open that communication both ways, then you get to the solution, Here we are in Washington, wall, no wall, wall, I don't know. I think each side needs to figure out what is important. I don't have the answer, believe me.
And not
but
throw a tantrum, but at least try to
right,
figure out what's
figure out. But you have to listen to each other, and yeah, I shouldn't use that as a parallel because I don't have any answers. Meanwhile, we have a government shutdown. Yeah,
Right. Well, obviously you did a good job because they sent you back for the next 10 plus years.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. 10 years.
10 years,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, a couple of my races, one year, I should say, I didn't have an opponent at all. I didn't have to do any campaigning.
It must have been really nice.
It was luxurious. I got to focus on my business because it was, frankly, a drain to be running this place and campaigning and serving. And, Vince, as a business partner, was a great asset to allow us. The business kept thriving under his doing double duty and me coming home at night and doing what I can, but that was quite an adventure. I only stopped running for the legislature, not because I didn't get reelected, but I didn't run for reelection.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Did you not run because you wanted to come back and focus on your
Well,
business?
at that point it had been 10 years, life was marching on, and I needed to make a living.
Yeah.
And $10,000 a year in the legislature wasn't going to cut
Yeah,
it for
I
me.
don't think people realize that the legislators, they really don't make anything.
They make a little bit more now. There's a cost of living built
Right.
in, but no, it's every state is different. Some
Sure.
and a lot of people, you're absolutely right, thought that we were making $80,000 a year. I'm like, no. Had good health insurance. I appreciated that
Yep.
back then, but not much money. And I remember sitting in the Senate one day and kind of looking around at all my colleagues and sort of saying, "Oh, okay, retired, has a very successful law practice, whatever, has a pretty good business, or and all these people." And I'm thinking, I'm sort of struggling as a small business owner, nest egg or something to fall back on. And I said, I really can't do this again. I need to, this is why, I can see it now. I greatly respect the fact that Maine has a citizen legislature, and I don't think it should change. I mean, some people have advocated for paying legislators more of a salary so we could have more people willing to run.
Right.
But then you're going to have professional legislators, and I don't think that's the
Right.
solution. I think having people from all walks of life. I mean, I was one of the few small business people that were there because it was close enough for me to.
Sure.
It's only a short commute from Hollowell.
Afford to be absent for a little bit.
Yeah, I could, and I could be home instantly. I was building our big conference center, the gathering place, while I was in the legislature, and I would have to run back here and meet with the contractors and have meetings with them and all that stuff. That was a challenge, but it was fun. That I had done enough. My 10 years was enough. Maybe I'll go back someday. We'll see.
Yep.
But the burning desire in my heart isn't necessarily there at the moment. I've got my hands full here.
Yes.
Yeah.
You left there and you went back to DEP. I guess I
Yeah,
should
I
say.
had a couple of years after that. I was the commissioner asked me to come on board to handle legislative affairs and overall communications.
Yep.
And that was interesting. I enjoyed that, but to be honest with you, going from being a state senator where I get to make my own decisions.
Right.
Really, I mean, I'm responsible for my votes and what policy statements I make, to then working for the commissioner.
Being told what to put out
Being
and when.
told
and
what
things
to
like
do,
that.
yeah, which, and it was fine because we generally agreed on everything, but I didn't find it as rewarding as
Sure.
I had, again, working for myself or being in the legislature. You make me think of all these parallels. Back when I was a kid, I was alone, so I've sort of accustomed to making my own decisions and being responsible for them. And I enjoyed the 2 years afterwards, but I really wanted to get back to innkeeping and focusing on that full time, and business here was growing, and I was ready to be my own boss again.
And then you've been back here ever since?
Yep, hands are totally full here, for sure, for sure. We do over 225 events a year here.
Wow,
at
that
the
many?
end. Yeah. Some of them may be very small events.
Sure.
Some of them, if there's a multiple day event, I'm counting that 2 or 3 times.
Right.
But that's a lot of stuff that happens here. Plus 8 rooms at the B&B. So yeah, we
That
keep
keeps you
quite busy. Yeah, yeah, and we've got some great staff, so it's not just us.
So
Yeah.
let's transition into Trek Across Maine.
Oh, sure.
What made you get into that? Because
Yeah.
I mean, 30 since 1985.
85. That's right.
That's a long time.
I was 25 years old when I signed up. I signed up because I thought, well, here's a great opportunity to get in shape. I just again, I've sort of I'm a workaholic, so I'm always
Yeah.
working and stuff. And I'm like, well, I need some goal to get into shape, and I still use that every year.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I got to get on my bike. I got to get going and do it. It started out as just a way of getting good exercise, but then I met wonderful people on the trek. I mean, the first year was only 100 people. I should say, at its peak, it was over 2,000.
Yep.
But we made wonderful friends that first year. I mean, going across the state. In the first year, they gave you a map and said, well, we'll see you tonight, and you're on your own. You just have to go across there. Very different from the trek today, where there are hundreds and hundreds of volunteers every day, and there are rest stops every 15 miles with food and water or drinks of all sorts. And just amazing support on the trek. It makes it much more comfortable, much easier. There are a broad range of cyclists that do it, so it's available for anyone. I encourage people to sign up. But the camaraderie really drew me back the following years, and it just became an annual tradition for me, and I really wanted to see those people again. And there was a picture on the mantelpiece. It's not there now. No, that's New England Music Camp, 1973.
You went to New England
I
Music
did.
Camp?
I did.
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah. And I was also, a few years ago, when the Snow Pond Arts Academy was established, I was the first chair of the school board.
Oh, no
Or
kidding.
Co-chair, actually.
My daughter goes out there.
Is that right?
She loves it.
Excellent,
Yeah,
excellent,
so-
excellent. I did that for a while, because I loved getting involved in things, and I loved seeing the vision for Snow Pond.
Yes. It is quite the vision.
Becoming
Oh, my goodness.
a performing arts center, which is a huge challenge, but I know what it's like to do a business in rural Maine.
Okay, so Small Rabbit Trail.
so,
What
yeah,
instrument
so
do you
anyway,
play?
Oh, an instrument? Well, I played French horn and cello
Oh, no
back
kidding.
then.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Gone on to play baritone horn.
Oh, my goodness.
Did that more in college. Yeah, in college I played baritone horn a little
Huh.
bit.
I'm a French horn guy
Are
from
you?
high school
Cool.
myself.
Okay,
so.
yeah. Sadly, that's all gotten dormant, and
Yeah.
I would love to get back into music someday. That'll be my post-innkeeping dream to focus on that again. So you asked about the...
Yeah, we're
We
still
digress.
on the trek.
We're
and
still
we
on the
got-
trek, right,
This is what I love
right.
about the rabbit trail. So.
Oh, the rabbit trail,
But
right,
you know,
right.
it brings up an interesting parallel.
Yes,
you know,
that's
from
right.
talking to you about all the different things and getting together. At the trek is a very. My wife has done it not consecutively, but she's done it 5 different times.
mhm.
But it does bring together quite a diverse group
Yeah,
of people
yeah.
to get together. And it goes along with what we've been
That's
talking
true.
about.
You know, and you have everybody dressed in lycra and colorful cycling uniforms, and you've got everybody. It's a great equalizer. You might have attorneys and doctors. A lot of doctors ride this thing, and then you've got people that just like cycling and work at McDonald's or whatever. I'm not trying to say one's better than the other,
Right.
but you have a wonderful melting pot of stuff. And then the mission of the American Lung Association. I am still on the Maine leadership board for the Lung Association in Maine here because I believe in the mission. And a lot of people get involved with the Lung Association because of their work for lung cancer and smoking cessation. But also the Lung Association is a very powerful environmental group nationally fighting for clean air standards.
Yep.
I mean, these are
Sure.
health-based standards, and they speak up and are very involved from a health perspective. And I've been very proud to be, one of the higher fundraisers every year. I raise $4,000 to $5,000 every year. And
How-
people are welcome to contribute.
How much do you think you've raised over the years?
Somebody asked me that last year, and I've got to go back and look, but it's probably $100,000 probably over the years. Yeah, something like that.
Now, what do you think about the changing of the route this year?
One of the reasons that the ridership dropped quite a bit, I mean, it was noticeable last year for me that,
Really?
frankly, I enjoyed it as a rider because the roads weren't as crowded, the rest stops weren't huge, the lines for the porta potties were tolerable. So it definitely has decreased a little bit. There are a lot of other opportunities now. Bike Maine does a big thing, which
The
is not a fundraiser,
ride.
but the lobster ride,
Dempsey
the Dempsey
Challenge.
Challenge.
Yep.
There are a lot of other opportunities out there that aren't committing to a 3-day ride across Maine. I mean, it's an incredible experience, and it's still the most major fundraiser, I believe, for the Lung Association in the country.
Sure.
It's a major clean air event, but it's also lots of money that they need to raise for important research and stuff. So
Right.
I think changing the route the hope is that it's going to bring more people on board, be a refresher course. It's a loop starting and ending in Brunswick now.
Yep.
So the logistics of every year, figuring out how am I going to get over to Newry where the thing starts, and then getting home from Belfast. And that's
Right.
and everybody from all over the state has to figure out some arrangement. I mean, there are buses and there are all sorts of ways to do that. But starting and ending at a place where you can go and park your car for the weekend and get out and go for a bike ride and come back and get in your car and go home. I mean, that's going to be
That's true. That does make
a marvelous
a
thing. But also the route is going to go through a lot of scenic places. The route in the past has always gone on Route 2, which is full of logging trucks all day Friday. Sadly, several years ago, we had our first death on the trek. A biker got hit by a truck, and a fairly young guy. Very sad. But we're going to get off those major highways, and we're going to see the ocean and lakes and streams, and it's going to be a very, very scenic route on mostly back roads. Yeah. But yet we're going to go through Freeport, right past L.L. Bean, who's a major sponsor of the trek. Yes. And then we're going to go up to Lewiston for the first time and stay at Bates College for the first night. So we're going to see a whole bunch of new things and new places, and it's the whole trek has been redesigned as opposed to getting from point A to point B.
Right.
It's going to be the same length. It's still 180 miles, still 3 days.
A whole new trek.
But it's a whole new trek, yeah. And on the last day, rather than trekking down Route 3 on with all the tourists and campers and everybody heading down to the coast, we're going to be coming down through Augusta, down to Brunswick, and it's going to be a beautiful
That's
route.
a beautiful drive.
Yeah.
Coming down 27.
Yeah,
to-
and off some side roads there, and it's just going to be great. And it's not a big tourist route, so there are a lot of reasons I think the trek's going to be fantastic, and I hope that people sign up and give it a try.
Nice.
Get your wife back in there to do
Oh,
it.
yes. I've been
Yeah?
trying to talk her into
Okay,
it for a couple of
good,
years. Our next door neighbor in our old house used to be Jeff Miller. I don't know
Oh,
if you're familiar
yes.
with him.
Yes. Down
So
in
anyway,
Washington now, yeah.
he used to, every year the trek would come around, he would leave Augusta and he would take his bike and he would ride up to Newry.
Uh-huh.
And then he would do down to Belfast, and then from Belfast he would ride home.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was all on his bike.
Yeah.
But of course he would also ride his bike to work
Yeah,
in the wintertime
yeah.
with his studded snow tires.
So one of the things that's interesting, these parallels, but Trek Across Maine and the Bicycle Coalition of Maine used to have a really strong partnership.
This is true, yes.
Because you had a lot of bike riders going across the state. Sadly, a couple years ago, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but that split, and the Bicycle Coalition of Maine is no longer involved in the trek. And there's something wrong there because those people need to listen to each other and figure out a way to bring that back together.
Right.
You've got the biggest bicycling event in Maine, and you don't have the Bicycle Coalition of Maine with a booth or with any involvement
Anything,
at all.
yeah.
I think that's sad.
Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, so I have a couple other
Sure,
questions here.
sure.
I wanted to get into being an innkeeper. Do you have any free time? What do you do in your free time?
I make free time, yeah. We're two owners, so we get to take turns now.
Sure.
I mean, we were married partners for a while, and that was really hard to have any free time because we didn't want to leave the inn and lose business, frankly.
Right.
But now we have separate times. It's much easier. So I've done a lot of world travel over the last 2 years. Well, last year, I have a fiancé actually who's in Pakistan, and he should be here hopefully in a couple months.
Oh,
We're at the end of a very long legal visa process.
Yeah, I bet. These days, yes, I bet.
But I've traveled to Dubai and Thailand and Malaysia, places I never thought I would ever go to, but it's places we could meet. So it's been a great experience. So I take time off. I find I need to go far away from the inn, so I don't keep thinking about it. If I'm far enough away so that if something happens, I can't get back there.
There's nothing you can do anyway.
Then I'll let it go. But it's good. So we can, again, take time for each other to go and do stuff. And it's
books, pleasure or work?
I read for pleasure. I read lots of stuff for work. And then sadly, innkeeping time takes an awful lot of time. It takes me a long time to get through a book now, sadly. I really miss that because at Swarthmore it was a lot of reading, and after college I certainly enjoyed it, but it's dwindled now. Yeah. That and music need to come back.
I was going to say, what's your favorite music? What's on your iPod right now?
Yeah, I don't listen to music that much. It's in the background here at the inn. I like a lot of indie rock stuff, so new. I like cutting edge stuff, but not too wild. No rap. No, thank you. I don't understand it. Maybe somebody can explain it to me. No specific things, no specific movies. The times I was able to go out to the theater as an innkeeper was really minimal. I have made it a point for, again, about the last 30 years of going to the Portland Stage Company in Portland, getting season tickets. And I've gone there. My mother, that's another thing, my mother, bring this full circle, she used to get me involved in cultural things. She got me involved in music and made sure I went to New England Music Camp and did stuff which was a big thing for our family to afford to do that. But she got me going to the theater in Portland back then, and I've gone for a long time. And I am actually just this year, I've joined the board of directors of Portland Stage Company.
Really?
To help my goal is to represent people outside of Portland, because it is
primarily Portland.
It's a Portland-based, but it's a professional theater that's here in Maine with equity actors, and we only have one of those in the state of Maine, really, on a regular basis, and that's Portland Stage. And I want to bring that. I want to bring people from Augusta to Portland Stage, maybe we'll get Portland Stage to do something up here too, and bring that theater culture broader than just Southern Maine.
Well, I did read on one of the pages somewhere that I read about you. You were very involved in a bunch of different theaters, the Gaslight Theater, and do you do anything with Maine State Theater down in Brunswick?
No, and I wasn't very involved. I was on the advisory board, which we didn't really advise. When I was a legislator, I got on a lot of stuff.
I bet.
Wasn't very actively involved. So this is my first foray into theater.
That's great.
Except, I was very involved in Snow Pond a little bit, getting the school up and running, and we advertise up there every year for their shows. Whatever I can do to help them go. And I actually have Richard Parkhurst, who's the work they're doing for the Colonial Theater here in Augusta is amazing, and I've offered to try to work on some connections that I might have, and that's exciting. Johnson Hall and Gardner, I think, is also a wonderful opportunity to see grow. I think if both of those places can come together and we can create more of a cultural hub here in the capital, which, we have great history in the capital, but we haven't got a lot of current music. And we have, a lot of music in Hollowell, but it's not theater kind of music. I think that'll be a wonderful asset to the whole area, and also, frankly, our business. People will come to the area, that go to these events, and it'll just help boost year-round business up here.
Well, and it
Yeah.
is very exciting to think about the possibilities. I mean, you have Johnson Hall, which is working on things, and they're already bringing in musical acts. And
Yeah.
then you have the Colonial Theater, which is trying to get their renovation going.
Yeah.
And then you have not New England Music Camp, but Snow
Snow
Pond,
Pond, right,
which
right.
they're renovating that amphitheater
yeah,
outside
yeah,
to do.
yeah.
So yeah, that
That's
all
right.
that brings everything locally.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
is really nice.
Very exciting. And, you know, keep heading up. Waterville Opera House has
Yes.
been going through stuff. And so there's, you know, the theater at Monmouth. We have a lot of stuff that could be packaged. We need to somehow, once this is all going, get it all together and get this
Market it.
get this area marketed
Exactly.
as a destination for
I would agree.
that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Continuing to transition a little bit, what brings you joy?
Well, I think I mentioned that, you know, making people happy.
Yep.
That really, well, two things. Making people happy. It really brings true joy to see somebody when they're checking out of the inn, paying their bill, and they're happy to pay their bill because
They had a
they're
great
happy.
time.
They had a great time. If they didn't have a great time, then I want to know why. And the very few complaints, well, we don't even have complaints, we have sort of input over the
Right.
years. If I hear something, we act on it. I'll digress, but many years ago, I had one person say, well, you know, that room didn't have a ceiling fan. It really needed one because we have one room that doesn't have windows on two sides. So I'm like, that's a great idea. So believe it or not, the next day I went out and put up a ceiling fan in that room because what a great suggestion.
Why not?
And I just, you know, if one person says something, then a lot of other people have thought it. But,
Yep.
you know, we have a 5 rating on TripAdvisor, and we've had that for many, 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 many years now. And there's a good reason for that. We don't ask people to write a 5-star review because that would be against TripAdvisor's policies,
Sure.
first of all. We ask them to write a review, and they can say whatever they want. But we've consistently rated up there, and that's very rewarding to see that, to read. And people write these big, glowing reviews, and it's just, that means so much to see that stuff. So that's one thing, making people happy. The second one is making the planet a better place, or at the very least, minimizing my impact
Right.
on our planet.
That one I could have guessed.
Yeah. You could have guessed that one, right. And it makes me happy to do
Yep.
that. I mean, yeah.
What inspires you?
Well, I think, you know, seeing other people that do amazing things. Elon Musk, for example. Again, I'm a Tesla fanatic
Yeah.
now, but you know,
couldn't tell.
he's somebody who wants to make money in the world and has done very well, and hope we do well in our business here. But at the same time, he's inspired a lot of people to do good things. He doesn't want to just make Teslas for money. He wants to change the future of transportation. To me, that's inspirational. I want to change the way people come and travel. They want to stay at a B&B, not a hotel. With all due respect to my fellow hoteliers, go enjoy a conference in the countryside with llamas wandering around, and
You have llamas here?
we have llamas. Yeah, we have
Do
eight,
you?
8 llamas
Oh.
in the barn. Yeah.
I
They've
didn't
been
know
there a
that.
long time, and try that rather than your normal thing that you always go to. So it inspires me to try to make a difference like others do.
Yeah. What are the most important lessons that you've learned through your life?
So the most important lessons I've learned are to let little things go.
Yep.
I tend to be a very detailed, pedantic, geeky guy that worries about details. I've learned don't sweat the little stuff. Worry about the big picture.
Yep.
Lesson I will continue to learn through life, I think, to do that. And also be honest. Don't ever try to fake your way out of something. If I had a client with a problem, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to be honest and listen to them. Or when I was in the legislature, there was one time early on, I think in my first career, I was meeting with a constituent who didn't want a gas pipeline to go through their backyard. It was coming through my district, this big gas pipeline that has been very good for the state by bringing natural gas in for generating electricity and stuff. But anyway, he didn't want it, going through it wasn't even his backyard, but in his neighborhood. And I went and talked with him, and because I had proposed rerouting it from one part of my district to another part of my district so it would follow existing utility corridors. Long story, and he was on an existing utility corridor and didn't want it. And I went and met with him, and I should have just said, I'm sorry, but I think if this pipeline's coming through, it needs to go here. But I danced around my answer, and I said, well, I hear your concerns, and I forget what I told him. But at the end of our meeting, he just turned to me and he said, it'd be better if you were just honest with me about this. I remember that to this day. It's like, I should have just said, this is what I agree with. And again, you don't have to agree with me, but I would have at least been direct and honest with him. And fortunately, I learned that, I think, in my first year or two in the legislature, and I just applied that all along the rest of the way. Be upfront with people, and they'll be honest with you, too. And, you know, because your integrity and your word is what's important, and you have to learn that, and good lessons in life, yeah.
What are you proudest of in your life?
Creating this business is really a pride and joy. I mean, I don't have kids, so I think this is my child that I've birthed and grown, and I hope it will outlive me. And I hope this is a legacy that I leave for people behind. Yeah, and I'm proud of all the environmental work I've done. I mean, I've left the state a better place. Those are good legacies. You know, no kids, so
Right.
I've done things that I hope make a difference.
And finally, what do you hope people will say about you at your funeral?
Who knows? I mean, I hope they just say he was a nice guy. He laughed a lot. He had a positive attitude, and did good things for the world. I don't want my name up in lights or anything like that. If people just have good thoughts about it, and maybe instead of posting a TripAdvisor review, they'll write a nice thing on a funeral wall or something.
Yep.
I'll just have my ashes spread on the soil somewhere in Maine, and go back to the earth from whence we came.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. I do have a couple last questions at the very end. I think you have. These are more like rapid fire questions.
Oh, okay.
If you ever see Inside the Actor's Studio, they always end with the same bunch of questions.
I guess I have seen that a couple times. Yeah, okay.
What is your favorite word?
Favorite word is nature. Yeah.
What is your least favorite word?
No. I hate that. I hate no.
What sound do you love?
Oh, something like the sound of crickets.
What sound do you hate?
Traffic. Traffic noise. Hate it.
What is your favorite curse word?
Do I have to say it?
You can say it. We bleep it out. So.
Yep. Use that a lot.
Okay. What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
Absolutely become an artist. I don't know whether it's music or visual or whatever, but I really want to get the other side of my brain energized. From the analytical side of my brain is fine and healthy, but the creative side, it needs to be energized.
I have to pick up that cello again.
Yeah. One thing I love to do occasionally, wish I could do it more, but Sunday nights in downtown Hollowell, they do life drawing, draw figures, people,
Really?
nude figures, and it's a wonderful thing for somebody who's writing proposals and doing the accounting here
Definitely
to go.
Get you out of that box.
Oh, and my brain will ache after a while because I'm trying to capture the lines and the shading, and I love doing that. And I think it's important for people to, get outside the box, get outside of what
Try
you're
new
doing,
things.
do something different, from whatever it is. Yeah.
What profession would you not like to do?
I've always thought the least thing I would like to do is to sell insurance. And God bless my neighbor who's my insurance agent, but nothing is less appealing to me. Sorry.
Well, somebody has to do it, right?
Somebody has to do it, and I'm glad they do, but not me.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you show up?
Oh, I think saying, you've done a great job taking care of people all these years. You've spent a lot of your energy caring for others. So I want you to just take a little time and enjoy yourself. Welcome.
Okay. Well, Scott, thank you very much.
Sure.
I've had a lot of fun.
My
I hope
pleasure.
you've had fun too.
I did. Absolutely.
But yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
We don't have sponsors. We promote local charities. This week's episode features the American Lung Association. For over 115 years, the ALA has continued its mission to save lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease. In Maine, the most recognized of the ALA initiatives is the Trek Across Maine, a 3-day, 180-mile bicycle ride that is every Father's Day weekend. In the past 35 years, the Trek has raised over $24 million for the ALA. To find out more, or to get involved, or to find somebody to sponsor for the Trek, please visit www.lung.org. That's www.lung.org.
Welcome home to Maine.
This podcast was created and edited by Scott Malevsky. Thanks to our guest this week, and a special thanks to Ellis Paul for the use of his song, Welcome Home to Maine. You can find his CDs, music, and touring schedule at ellispaul.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and iTunes. For more content and bios, visit www.interviewswithme.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope you join us next time.